All right. Now, I had another email sent in. I already read, but I'm going to read it again right now. And I debated whether or not to put this just on the How to Hunt YouTube channel, but I thought, no, I'm going to share it here. This is insane. Listen to this. Holy shit, Steve, you got to read this email. Use my name, Patrick Edgley. This email is not about Sasquatch. It's about a psychotic hunter that nearly took my life when I was just 14 years old in the fall of 1976. I was in a foster home in Saginaw, Michigan. My foster dad's name was Ron. He taught me how to shoot a longbow in preparation for deer bow hunting. We practiced shooting a straw bale. I had tight groups of arrows. Opening morning, Ron walked me to my ground blind next to a bait pile of apples and sugar beets. Ron left me in the dark with instructions of what to do should a deer show up. After it got daylight, a truck suddenly pulled right up to where my blind was, and a man wearing a blonde wig under a hat got out of the truck and told me to go sit on the bait pile because he was going to take a picture of me. I put my bow down as he told me. I sat on the bait pile, and this guy pulled out his bow and took a shot, and the arrow pinned my jacket sleeve to the tree next to me. I pulled my arm through, tearing the coat at the same time. The man laughed and told me his name was George. He could not pull his arrow out of the tree, so he unscrewed the arrow and put it away. George then had me hold up my deer tag as he took a picture with a Polaroid camera. He peeled off the backing to let the pic develop. He showed it to me and put the photo and my deer tag in my front pocket. This is creepier than shit. George asked why I was using a bait pile. I told him I was 14. It was my first time bow hunting. I told him my foster dad, Ron, was teaching me. George asked why I was in foster care, and I gave him a brief history of that. His eyes welled up with tears, and then he said excitedly, "Have you heard about me on the radio?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, you're going to because I'm famous." George then climbed into his truck and drove off. A few minutes later, my foster dad, Ron, showed up in my blind. "Oh," I said, "I thought you were him." "Him? Who?" Ron demanded. I told Ron all about George and what he had said to me. Ron's eyes grew huge, and he told me that he had to go right away. He made me lay down on some leaves, and while he threw a tarp over me, told me not to make a sound. He then buried the tarp with the leaves as he was leaving and said if George returned, run like hell to the cornfield and hide. How weird of a frickin' reaction is that? "Hey, you just about got killed. Let me leave you here by yourself again, and don't move until I come back," said nobody. I fell asleep very soon after Ron left, and I awoke to the engine of a vehicle, and I lay there under the tarp, frozen. I was afraid. And suddenly the tarp was pulled back, and a Michigan State trooper stood in front of me, one of the baddest of badasses. Ron was with him, and I was shaking. And after I had calmed down some, I was asked to disclose everything I knew about George. I showed the trooper where the arrowhead was stuck in the tree, the tire tracks, the peel-off, backing to the photograph, and the picture with my deer tag in my pocket. I also told the trooper about the blonde wig George wore with his gray hair sticking out from underneath it, as well as the type of truck he drove. George then apparently murdered several bow hunters that were using bait piles for a few seasons. Holy shit, I remember hearing about this too. He evidently hated anyone using a bait pile. They found George a month later and he had shot himself with the neighbors after the neighbors began to smell him. They found George a month later. He had shot himself and the neighbors began to smell him. They found several deer tags George had taken as trophies. He was a serial killer. My foster dad, Ron, took me aside one day and told me to go to the basement and turn on the radio to AM 1200 and listen to the state police broadcasted about how they had found the serial killer dead and no one had to be afraid anymore. I only went bow hunting a few times after that. The day I met George was the most hard evidence the state police had gathered since the killing began. I'd been paying attention to every detail George had said and done. I don't know why, but holy shit. So there you go. I'm waiting to talk on the phone with you as I have had several encounters with the forest people. Hope to hear from you someday, soon, and I get it. You get 1,000 emails. Thanks for your platform. You make a difference. I'll get a hold of you, man. I've already marked it down as look into. That's a holy shit email, is it not? Man, that is scary. You know, it's funny, you know, I think a lot of people react with hesitancy or apprehension when they bump into people in the woods. Some places more so than others. Not so much here, but enough. I mean, I'm always on guard no matter what. Not paranoid, but I'm not stupid. Especially in the woods all by yourself, right? Especially when in British Columbia when you're somewhat near the city, because a lot of those gangster criminals from Vancouver come up to Pemberton, the Sea to Sky, and other areas around Prince George, around Williams Lake, and dump bodies. Anyway, reminds me one time when I was up in Alaska by myself and I hiked up in the mountains of Chugach and I came out through a park, went up and over the top of these mountains, and I'm coming out, I started running and bumping into people hiking up the trail. And I just had 2 walking sticks in my backpack. I'm a little dirty from being in the woods, and there's a couple there coming up the trail. I said, "Hey, how's it going?" I go, "How far down is it? How far down is it to the trailhead?" Because I've been up on the top of these mountains for a couple of days. I didn't come in this way. And they're kind of talking to me, and the woman is looking at me, and I notice in her hand she's clutching some kind of spray, and she's looking at me sideways. I'm like, and I caught notice of that, and then I said, "Okay, thanks, see ya," and I kept on hiking. I'm like thinking to myself, "Holy shit, what's wrong with that woman?" Right? But I guess there's a lot of shit that goes in around Anchorage, Alaska, too, right? Odd. That's very terrifying. I'll get a hold of you, Matt, for sure. All right, I got you in my get a hold of folder. I'm glad you survived that. What a twisted son of a bitch, right? Wow.